I will just say from my perspective, I believe a primary property tax is a more fair taxation as it goes wider across the board based on how much property you have, rather than us always having to increase utility rates, right? Water and electric to be our primary source. And disagree with me if you will. I'm curious from staff's perspective. You have way more experience than I do, but it seems like a primary property tax would be a lot more fair.
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman, that's a great question, and I think it's worth the kind of looking into the actually way one perspective I have, and I'm not, I can we can look at this, but we're always kind of in public policy looking at the broadest base of application of any rate or tax. That's the best kind of equity across a community that you can come up. So the broadest base you can come up with. The challenge with property tax is that because the way state laws are written and way oftentimes assessments are done, you can see a lot of sophisticated property owners can get their property taxes reduced, or there are quite a bit of utility users in the city of Mesa that are exempt from property tax. So one of the things that utilities does in the broadest sense, okay, let's talk about it in the broadest sense, utilities actually pick up almost every account, whether you reside, do business, or you visit in Mesa. And the way I look at it is everyone is a beneficiary of those public safety services that certainly are supported by that. So regardless of whether you're a nonprofit church, governmental institution, school district, whatever it might be, or whether you're a sophisticated industrial complex or whatever that might be able to challenge and get exemptions on your property tax, everybody pays a portion of the utility rate, and they pay it because their meter is turning. So that's a conversation we can have, but that's one perspective that I think the utilities does allow for a broader base of spreading that cost. I think and I think some of the bigger users of utilities are also some of the more sophisticated groups that sometimes are also, if we looked at the secondary property tax, how much they're paying there, I think it'd be a disproportionate, it'd be different proportion of what they're paying there, but it's worth looking at.
Sure. And I guess maybe to the point of a more broad tax, if we did introduce, or if it was one of our goals to have a primary property tax with our strategic planning session coming up in a couple of days, maybe that's one of the conversations that we have. But I would just say if we do introduce a primary property tax with it being the goal to offset specifically residential utility rates, right? Rather than when you talk about like the corporations or some of the other ones, perhaps you introduce a primary property tax that helps offset residential rather than going and offsetting, if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we can talk about it.
Sure. Thanks.
I'll just talk for 15 seconds on this, so time me. It's got to be voter approved. 25 years ago, I was part of this. I sat in this room, had this conversation. Wayne Brown, the mayor at the time, said, this is factually correct. We should have a property tax. It's a more stable way to do it. You got three legs on your stool that way, but it's politically incorrect because the voters of Mesa, Arizona are not going to create a new tax on themselves. When I retired from politics in 2000, and I knew I was never running again for any office, and so I didn't care if people hated me, I volunteered to be the co-chairman of the Let's Have a Property Tax campaign. So in 2002, that was on our ballot. It was probably the biggest defeat in the history of Mesa politics. We have tested this question in polling in recent years, and it's a non-starter. That is pretty much a guarantee if you put on the ballot asking the people of Mesa, hey, we got a good idea, let's start a new tax. It's not going to happen.
Right, and I think more specifically, it's the way that we word the tax as well,
and
right?
The way we worded it in 2002 was, we're not raising your taxes, we're shifting money from one, so that we have a more stable, that message was made very well, but it's not one that people want to hear. It is my personal experience on that. But it's right, but it's correct. It is correct. It would be, although the argument that Mr. Brady makes for this, that's the argument that prevailed in our city council 80 years ago when we decided that the more equitable way of allocating cost in our community is if you're turning on the tap, we know you're there, we're going to ding you, as opposed to doing it through the property tax. So.
Yeah, and I'll just say I'm more concerned about doing what's right based upon us sitting in this room and studying issues rather than worrying about my reelection campaign and whenever that comes out, right?
But
Like
there's an economics to it, though, too. There's very much so.
Yeah, we can all get unelected, but on the same ballot, this question will this question will fail along with us if it's on the ballot. Okay.